everyone for coming. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Darryl Tonemah. I am Kiow, Comanche, and Tuscarora. I live here in Western New York. Our res is just outside Niagara Falls, New York. If I went out my door here and turned right, Dana knows this, I'm on Center Street in my little town, Lewiston. If I turned right, Canada is about a mile up the road to the right. I'm a psychologist. I've been living back here for about 10 years. Before that, I was teaching at the University of Oklahoma. And before that, I was the psychologist for a couple of studies in Phoenix, the National Institutes of Health. But all my formative years were in the Dakotas, in Standing Rock. And then I went to like 2nd through 10th and a half grade there, and then went to Northern after that and graduated from there. And many of my favorite life memories are of the Dakotas. So thank you guys for that. It is formative. It was formative in how I thought about who I was and potentials and beliefs and things like that. So I don't even say this lightly. It is an honor to be able to do this work and go back to Todd County when I can, and to He-Dog when I can, and out to Yankton and all different rests when I can, because that's a big part of who I am. And so when Annie and I started talking about how the COVID and how it's affecting our communities, not just the community there, but Native communities everywhere are seeing spikes and things that we don't want to see spikes in. So we want to continue to tap into our strength and our resiliency, and remember that resiliency doesn't have to come from hurt. It can come from good things. So it would be cool if a year from now, when COVID season is over, that we can look back and say, here's who we were during that season, and here's what we were about, and here's how we became stronger. Here's how we lifted each other. Man, that'll be a good day when we're having those conversations. And Carminda and I, my wifey, we were just having that conversation this afternoon before I came here. And it wasn't a smooth conversation because I was telling you guys, I've been home for the past 11 and a half months now. And before that, I was gone most of the month. So this is the first time we've ever been together in our 20 years of marriage. This is the first time that I've been home consistently. And today we kind of had to decide, well, are you going to like me, honey, or not? And the jury's still out. I'll find out when I get home tonight. Maybe stuff's out on the lawn. Anyway, so actually you guys are joining at a good day, because we kind of diving into the theoretical, what's going on with the brain and the body during stress and trauma. And then we've been adding tools. And I just wanted to take a break from all the mind stuff about the theoretical. And I thought, let's just do just a practical thing today. Let's knock out something practical that is pretty easy to use, that everyone listening can kind of glom onto. So I wanted to practice the idea of updating the mind. Because if you remember from our previous talks, maybe if this is unfamiliar, this might be 1 or 2 talks ago. There's a part of our brain that when there's stress or trauma, it pulls us back to when it occurred, and it's kind of reliving it, not so much remembering. We're not making a member of our current moment, but we're reliving the sensation base in the current moment. Or that same part of the brain pushes us to the future, to the what could have, what if, which is creating stress, which is all hypothetical. This stuff hasn't occurred, and we're not even sure it's going to occur, but we fill in the blanks with, because I've had this stress, this is going to happen. So we create this hypothetical stressful future. So what's occurring is we're being robbed of this moment by the brain trying to wrestle us in these directions. And in this moment is freedom and healing and imagination. But if we're too busy wrestling, we're being robbed of those things. And imagination is one of the most critical tools in human life, in human development. You are doing this work right now because you imagined that it was possible. I get to do this work with you because when I was a little chubby kid on Standing Rock getting wedgies behind a school, I imagined My wedgie won't last forever, which that still remains to be seen too. But there was a possibility of something else is out there for me, something else. That's imagination. But if we have complex traumas, we're getting pulled here or pushed there, and we're missing out of the imagination of this moment. Now imagine that. A generation of our native young kids that doesn't have that opportunity. And you can see what they look like walking down the hall. They're constricted, or this the one hyper aroused, their brain's too occupied to have the freedom required for imagination. So today, we want to update the mind. We want to tell that part of the brain, thank you for your service. You got us this far, doggone it. Thank you for that. But I don't need you anymore to have these responses. We need to update the hippocampus, the long-term memory storage of the brain, where it thinks things are happening over and over and over again. It just needs to be updated. So the more research I looked into this, and my favorite book of the moment right now, I want to show it to you guys. Oops, is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Pick that up, please. It's going to be, you'll be glad you did. But I love what they talk about the research on mindfulness. And I've heard about mindfulness for years, and you guys have too, particularly in education. You've heard about mindfulness for years. But there are so many different understandings of it. What is mindfulness? Like even when right before introduced, was it Monica? Let's breathe for a second. That's a form of mindfulness, attending to your breathing. And remember, when you breathe in through your nose, it activates the sympathetic system where you get jacked up. And when you breathe out slow through your mouth, it activates the parasympathetic system and releases acetylcholine. So the heart rate starts to slow down. And so it's not just a good idea. It's not just an ethereal concept. There's actually, you are changing your body when you're doing that. That simple act changes the body. And the more often you do it, the more the brain fires and wires in your behalf for you in good ways. So understanding there's a broad range to that, from let's take a quick breath to what is the deep end of the physiology of the baroreceptors in the neck during the inhale, all this stuff like that. So there's a broad range of it. Sometimes people say it's just sitting still. But for our working definition for the next half hour or so is paying attention on purpose in the present moment. Good. Mindfulness, paying attention on purpose in the present moment. Because remember, if we're living in COVID season and there's a lot of stress or traumas occurring, we're perpetually being pulled this way or pushed this way. What could happen? What could happen? What could happen? The stress of what happened. It feels like this in me. Let's keep going. So there's a part of our brain that's called the prenucleus. And what it does, I believe that's how it's pronounced, the prenucleus, or it could be the prenucleus or the prenucleus, or something along those lines. And what it does, that part is the part of your brain that is activated when you're idle, when you're not filling your time, when you're not busy doing things. If you notice, if you have a lot of stressors and traumas, you like to have busyness. You like to be doing something. Well, I got to be doing this. I got to run to the store. I got to do this, like that. So there's this frantic energy because downtime, the prenucleus goes to what it's familiar with. So if there's been a lot of stress and trauma, that part of your brain says, let's do this. Let's go here. Let's have this preoccupy your time, your mind. And you know, if you had tough stuff happen, that when you're falling asleep or trying to fall asleep is when all these images and sensations and pictures kind of pop into your mind. And that's a default, the prenucleus. It believes it needs to do that to keep you safe and alive. So when we've had maybe this COVID season, maybe some images, some things that have been said or you've seen are kind of popping into your mind. One of the things that I have people do all the time is, and I have them think about specifically 3 things right when they're falling asleep. And you guys have probably heard this. And I do this as challenged with my patients and things like that, but let's think about 3 things right when you're falling asleep, and they got to be good and powerful things that happen today. So today I had my parents' breakfast, and I hung out with my wife, and they came and did some work, and I like the calmness of my office. Those are three good things. So when I'm laying in bed tonight, I could just pop those in. Everything about them, what things smelled like, what my chair felt like, everything about it. And then tomorrow I do the same thing, 3 good things, but it's got to be different things. Otherwise, we're just doing one neural pathway. You got to do 3 again tomorrow, and then 3, and then 3, and then 3. And pretty soon, you're kind of sending an army of things firing back against this default to kind of create a new firing and wiring. Because what we want to do is create sovereignty, moments of sovereignty. And if I'm sitting there in bed and I've just gone with it, and it didn't happen by accident, but it happened, and now it just kind of fired and wired over the years. Now in this moment on January 26, 2021, I get to start refiring and rewiring. And tomorrow I'll do the same thing over and over and over again. Pretty soon, your brain starts to learn that, oh, this is what we want. This is the direction we're going. And so it starts firing and wiring that way instead, over time. So that's called the prenucleus or prenucleus. Then there's the medial prefrontal, which is that part of your brain that either pulls you back or pushes you forward. It just needs updating. It needs to realize, well, what's happening presently. And the more we focus on what's happening presently, the less it has the capacity to be pushing you in different directions. The more focusing on the present. That doesn't mean that we're denying that a future exists or we're denying that the past exists. What we want to do with a sensation base is focus on what's happening in the present, because that's when the brain gets updated. Oh, this is happening. This is happening. That student that screams under the desk is reliving something that isn't in the present. It's happening here. But there's been something environmentally that says it's happening right now again. And it makes it feel like it's occurring right here, right now. But what we can do with the sensation bases, sight, sound, hearing, touch, smell, taste, once we can use our sensation base to update the brain into this moment. The present is a sensation experience. The present is a sensation experience. You hear my voice, you're sitting in your chair, either you're hungry, maybe you have to go to the bathroom, maybe your shirt is too tight, maybe it's too loose, whatever it is, you're having a sensation experience right now. That's what's happening right now. The future has no sensation experience because it hasn't happened yet. And the past is over, so anything is going to be relived or a memory, but it's not actually occurring right now. So once we start practicing the present as a sensation experience, we can start updating the mind. And we're going to practice this by the time we're done today. So becoming attuned. There's a big word in trauma work, attunement. So attunement is being present in what's going on in this moment and being with the people around us, being aligned with the people that are around us, being able to sense them, to feel them. That's called attunement. And you know, when you're hanging out with somebody and you're just enjoying yourself and you guys are getting each other and you're doing that res laugh where you go, you cover your mouth because you only got like 5 teeth, like that. That was my great grandma. You're doing that because you're attuned with them. You can feel them. You can feel what they feel like and they feel you. That's attunement. Now listen to this. Lack of attunement is stressful to the brain. They did research on this and found that they had mothers sitting in a chair and then kids sitting on the floor, and the moms were attuned. They were engaged with the child, how they're feeling, and they were kind of with them. And then they had the moms pick up the phones and do this and became inattuned, unattuned, disattuned, stopped attuning with them. And the kids, the stress part of their brains, they had little things in their brain, lit up. They became stressed when attunement wasn't present for them. And the mothers would say, well, I was in the room with them. And you'll have parents say that. I was in a room with them. Yeah, but were you attuned to them? Were you with them? Or were you just present? And it's great if they're present, but to take that to the next level is how we want to heal is becoming attuned to the kids and being with them and present with them. That's attunement. And the more we can practice attunement in ourselves to our environment, the more that increases our capacity to do it with others. Oh, there you go. I'm gonna land that plane right there. The more we can become attuned to ourselves and our present environment, the more we can do that with others. And the research shows the more we can do that with others, the more it affects them in good ways. So we start creating economies of scale. We start creating reverberations because that helps them. And then that moves out and that moves out and that moves out. Oh, let's keep going. So in this book, Bessel van der Kolk, his big statement here is trauma is not remembered, it's relived. Just like I just said, it's bringing the past sensation base to the present. It didn't get updated. We tend to think of trauma as an illness of the past, but trauma is isn't an illness of the past, it's an illness of not being fully alive in the present. Come on. Of not being fully alive in the present. So practicing being fully alive in the present. So in doing this, in being our working definition then, paying attention on purpose in the present moment, we have to find ways to maintain a sense of calm in this present moment, which is hard. Because some of us, if we do exercises together, it's hard for even some of us to close our eyes because the images pop up or memories try to pop in. But knowing that this present moment is a safe moment, it's safe here. So one of the first things I do, and I believe I've done this with this group before, but I'll do it again real quick, is create a sensory moment. So if somebody's here in my office and they come in activated, you can see that they're feeling it. And I'll have them heart rate variability, breathe, HRV, breathe, 3 counts in, pause, 7 counts out. So I have them slow the game down. I'll say, let's slow the game down a little bit. Let's do nothing for a second. And remember, that simple act is releasing acetylcholine to their heart to slow it down. And then I'll say, let's look around the room. Then before I even do that, I'll say, let's push your feet hard in the floor. Push your feet hard in the floor. And I have them put both feet on the ground and push really hard. Because for whatever reason, with an fMRI study, where they're pushing their feet really hard on the floor, it grounds them. So they're not floating around, or you've heard the phrases beside myself or out of my head. Cliches come from somewhere. And so that, for whatever reason, that sends a message to the brain that they are here, that they are not floating around. And so I'll say, we're right here in this room. It's a good place to be. It's my office, and it's 1:15 on a Tuesday. And give the date. And this is where we are now. It's a good place to be. And just for practice, but and do this where you are. I'll tell them, just what's 5 things you see here in my office? And they'll listen. Right where you are, practice that. I'll do it right now. I got my tea, I got my electrical thing, got my phone, got my keys, and I got a brain. That's a strange list. 5 things you see in your office. So look around, 5 things you see. 4 things you feel. So I feel my desk on my elbows, I got my watch on my wrist, I feel my shirt on my shoulders, and my chair on my bottom. I can feel that. 3 things you can hear. Right now, practice 3 things you can hear. I hear a car driving by outside, I can hear my voice, and I hear a voice of the guy next door to my office. 2 things you can smell. I'll smell this. Tea and detergent. And 1 thing you can taste. I can taste that. So what do we just do? We push your feet to the ground, we slow the game down, and made the present an actual experience, an actual sensory experience. So we went down your list: see, feel, hear, smell, taste, because that is what is occurring right now. Anything in the future is not occurring. Anything in the past is not occurring. This is occurring. Remember our definition? Go back here. Paying attention on purpose in the present moment. So you create a space in the present moment. So once that's created and the person's comfortable, so I'll have them breathe it down and find a way to be calm in the present, in this moment. So when I say calm, I just mean maybe your heart's beating a little bit slower, maybe your shoulders feel heavier, and maybe feel you're settled back into the chair. We'll call that calm. So then what I do is when I'm saying this to them, and I'll have them breathe, I'll say, if there's any information your body gives you, just breathe it down. And there's other tools I use, but we're not going to do that tonight. I'll say, let's breathe that down. So what we want to do is learn in mindfulness, in the way that we're working with it tonight, is creating and maintaining calm in the presence of images, of sounds, thoughts, physical sensations, tightening, loosening, tingling, that remind you of the past. I'll say this whole thing again. Are you ready? Learning to maintain that calm that's been established, because you don't move forward until the body is at peace, is calm. And once it's there, things might pop up. So learning to maintain calm in response to images, thoughts, sounds, physical sensations that remind you of the past. So it was kind of a wrestling match for a while with somebody that comes in regularly, because calm was the scary place. We're vulnerable, in fact, when we're calm, because our body's not on edge for protection. So if there's been any of the list of abuses, calm, the calm space is for that person a dangerous space. So when things feel in danger, the body says, what are we doing here? Wake up, wake up. So maybe the heart starts pounding, maybe images of those things start popping in. Maybe there's a tightening in the body. So what we want to do is monitor that. So I'll say to them, where do you feel it? Not why is it? Not what is the image, anything like that. I want to know where it is. Because if we're dealing with sensations, remember our brain here, that is from the way back here in the brain. Logic is way up here. The sensation base is way back here. So let's have this conversation. Where is it and what is it doing? Where is it and what is it doing? And let's just hang with it. Let's breathe it down. Now you say the phrase, let's breathe it down. Let's do nothing for a second. And their tempo, your tempo, may be different than mine. Maybe mine takes a lot longer to calm down because I'm so hyper. But maybe yours calms faster. Maybe yours takes longer. But wait, because what happens is the sympathetic system wakes up and says, do I need to Hulk out? Is there going to be a need for me to Hulk out on somebody here? But if we wait, the parasympathetic, we breathe it down. Here's a big phrase for our work in the future. Attending to a sensation changes that sensation. So let's just hang. Where is it? It's tight in my chest. Let's just pay attention to us. Let's hang with it. And watch it bloom back the other direction. It doesn't pop back. It blooms back. So I was doing this with a person here, and things kept popping up, and I said, let's just do nothing. And in trauma work, they say use prosody, good prosody. Prosody is just the tempo, tone of your voice, the language you use, things like that's called prosody. So be not just saying you're safe, but being that safe place for the person. So we use good prosody. And I said, well, where is it? What's it doing? What happens next? And that's a big thing. If you're going to try this, remember that maybe do it with a partner when you first start out. What happens next is a big question, because trauma tries to stay stuck. It prefers stuckness. That sensation base prefers stuckness because trauma is a jerk and it wants to be a bully. And so it prefers you in this state. But what happens next is this state. So I'll say, what happens next? Where does it go? And then I'll wait. The trick is to be calm and patient and slow. Slow, slow, slow. So finding, once we practice this more and more and more, we get there quicker. And this person that I'm talking about, after a couple sessions, she said, I have never felt like this before. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, my heart's not pounding. My head isn't spinning. My muscles aren't tight. So she described peace as lack of symptoms. Hear me say that again. My head's not pounding. My head's not spinning. My heart's not pounding. I'm not all tight. That's how I feel now. So she wasn't even comfortable recognizing that it was peace. She described it as void of symptoms. And with that mindset, you're basically waiting for the symptoms to pop back in again. So rather than having our traumatized folks saying, here's my life void of symptoms, what if we claimed a sovereign moment and said, this is peace. This is me having peace in my body right now. May not last forever, probably won't last forever. But right now, I have peace in my body. And then own that. Have that be a sovereign moment. Have that be a victory. And so she said, I never even thought of that before. I always thought if I don't have something, then I'm just waiting for it. But she didn't have, she was void of symptoms. Well, let's call that peace then and settle into that and start claiming that and start owning that rather than being afraid when this is going to happen again. That's healing. That's when healing starts. Is I've had a whole different somatic place than it was previously, and I have to understand this somatic place differently. Woo! Come on. This is not me doing the work. That was her doing the work. Good for her. So find a way to be fully alive in the present and engage with people around you. And she opened up her eyes, and it was one of my favorite moments as a psychologist, and just had tears in her eyes. And she said, I have never felt like this before. So we got to the point where she didn't have to keep secrets from herself about the ways that she tried to survive for so many years, because there's so much shame that she has attached to it. So we just decided that you weren't broken or crazy. That's just those were the tools you used to survive, and you don't need them anymore. You're telling me right now that you have a whole different toolkit for survival now, and alcohol doesn't have to be one of them anymore. Man, good for her. Jeez, good for her. So trauma therapists use mindfulness to support trauma treatment. There are other ones like EMDR, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing, somatic experiencing, which is what we just discussed, was the messages the body gives, somatic experiencing. Emotional freedom techniques. I have to tell you, if this goes the way that I hope it goes, eventually I'd like to teach you guys how to do that tool called emotional freedom techniques. It's my favorite tool. It works quick. It's different, but as a provider, I can't argue with results. I can't argue with what happens in front of me, that I get to see that people really move the needle for themselves. So maybe further down the road, we'll look into that once we get all this foundational stuff done. So those are kind of the therapeutic things. Non-therapeutic interventions like yoga, martial arts, Tai Chi, dance, acupuncture, massage have been shown to be effective supports for victims of trauma. And I have to be honest with you guys. For the longest time, I was like, shut up with your Tai Chi. Come to find out I was wrong. Yeah, and I can admit it. Because there's a lot of breathing involved. If you're going to dive into the yoga end of it, make sure there's a lot of focus on breathing with the yoga, but a lot of motion that uses both sides of the body, crosses the midbrain. breathing involved, a stillness is involved, letting the body do what it needs to do. All awesome stuff. And I get it now. Doggone it, I get it now. And previously, that's not what we were taught in school. They said, well, you have to do this and you have to talk about the awful things that happen over and over again. And after you talk about awful things for 5 years, and then I'll buy a new boat. But come to find out, we were trying to get people, the bottom line is we really want them to feel better. And so I had to open my mind to the possibilities that there's so much more, even nutrition. We'll probably have a class on trauma and nutrition at some point here. Let's keep going. It says trauma creates a disconnect between mind and body. Hold on, I had another thought. I've shared this with you guys before, but I'll share it again since I'm on this page about martial arts, Tai Chi, dance, singing. I've had conversations with a woman from the Onondaga school. Onondaga is one of the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee, and she and I have a lot of talks about this stuff. And she wants to write a book together about culture and its role in healing trauma, which I am totally down with. There's already a bunch of research on that stuff. But even how we express culture, dance, those on our list here, singing, the vagus nerve goes here and vibrates when we sing, which activates the vagus nerve, which is what we want, and calms. Singing in unison with other people, creating synchrony, is good for the vagus nerve. Movement, singing, dancing, learning language with other people in synchrony. Man, there's so many things that's going to be a cool book, because it ties in things that we do inherently already with the healing, which is going to be beautiful. Okay, now I'll keep going. So since trauma creates a disconnect between mind and body, anything that helps someone feel safe in their body and connected to themselves in the present moment can support the healing of trauma. So here's the big thing. We have to, when I think about the people that I see either on telepsych stuff or in the room it's easier because their vagus nerve can pick up on me. And they can borrow our safety. That if you take this up and you do your own home cooking and you start healing yourself, other people can borrow it from you. Their vagus nerve picks up. We'll do a whole class on the vagus nerve, but picks it up and recognizes that you are good and you are safe and you are solid. And once it picks that up, they borrow that and they start to feel gooder and safer and solider. So there's this study in separate studies examining the effects of mindfulness on the brain. Researchers found that mindfulness had almost precisely the opposite effects of trauma on the brain. I'm gonna say that again. In separate studies examining the effects of mindfulness on the brain, researchers found that mindfulness had almost precisely the opposite effect of trauma on the brain. Participants in an 8-week mindfulness training program demonstrated increased density of gray matter by using the fMRI. Remember I talked about the functional magnetic resonance imaging. By using the fMRI, they found that the prefrontal cortex, there was more mass there. And that's where your logic, you're able to think things through, you're able to come to better conclusions. Executive functioning. It helps the hippocampus. It helps the brain filter what is necessary and needed in this moment. So what happens is that we get all this information from the body, it goes up the neurons in the neck to the thalamus, and the thalamus says, well, let me send that to the prefrontal. And you got a good, healthy prefrontal that says, dude, relax. It's all good. And so we're able to make a decision on it instead of reacting to it. Awesome. It decreased activity in the amygdala. You guys remember our amygdala? Right here, right back here. Size of a bottle top. the amygdala kind of basically holds memories of stress and trauma, less activity there. It helps with the function of the prenucleus. Remember that guy, our buddy, which is part of the default mode network. So it helped all this physiological brain function. Not just a good idea, not just let me think of puffy clouds and rainbows and marshmallows. It is, let me attend to what this needs to attend to in this present time, and the brain gets it. It moves for you. It's so easy. It doesn't require that your mental health be about chemistry. It doesn't have to be at the pharmacy. It can do amazing things for you. Listen to this. Simple practice of turning your attention to the present moment, your breath, the sounds you hear, the 5 things we did. You can actually physically change the structure of your brain and counteract the effects of stress and trauma in less than 8 weeks. Studies are now revealing that mindfulness-based therapy is more effective than antidepressants and cognitive behavioral therapy combined in treating PTSD. Even better, the results are permanent as long as the participants continue to practice mindfulness in their daily lives. Let me park on that for a second. This has to be a lifestyle. It can't be an event, because you want to be well. We want our communities to be well in the long term. So it can't be an event. An event, by definition, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we can't have it be an event. We have to say, this is just what I do. This is how I roll. Taking that 5 minutes in your office a couple times a day, and then when you're falling asleep at night, 5 minutes, crying out loud, can actually change the brain. That blows me away. Jeez, that blows me away. So 2 things to consider as we dive into this. You must be physically and emotionally safe in order to begin practicing mindfulness or treating trauma in general. PTSD functions as a natural defense mechanism in response to overwhelming and unsafe environments. So increasing self-awareness in an unsafe situation would only serve to further make things worse. So make sure you're in a safe environment. Make sure things are good. Make sure, I always recommend starting with a partner so they can ask you questions and walk through sensation basis, things like that. Once we dive further into Peter Levine's work, we'll probably practice what it would look like with a partner more. So increasing self-awareness, increasing mindfulness in an unsafe situation could further destabilize somebody. Second, mindfulness requires the ability to non-judgmentally notice the body, notice the sensations, notice the images, and not labeling them, but just saying, my heart's beating faster now. Rather than labeling it fear or anger or anxiety or frustration, just kind of getting the information and then hanging with the information and seeing what it's about rather than labeling it. So, but once we start labeling, I'm scared, it snowballs. So that includes self-critical thoughts, difficult emotions, painful sensations. If we increase awareness without a sense of compassion for these difficult experiences, we're also more likely to cause more harm than good. So getting to know them without judgment. I think I shared this with you guys, but we have a lot of new folks. There was a guy here, and he had, he's from the res here, and he's been passed, he would drive, and he'd just about pass out after about 10 minutes of driving. And his arms get tingly, and and then you have to pull over. And like 7, 8, 9 years ago, he was up the road here, and he had a blood clot, and he got hot and sweaty and just about passed out and pulled over. And next year, he remembered he was in the ambulance. And so he's been wanting to see me, and we needed to rule out a bunch of the medical things. We want to make sure there wasn't a clot or was there brain damage or anything like that. And we've since ruled everything out medically, and his body just kind of isn't sure what to do with this information, so it knocks him out. then come to find out that when he was a little boy, 5 years old, he was in a car accident as well and got knocked out. And the next thing he knew, he woke up in the ambulance. Sound familiar? And then when he's about 20, all this comes out of his list of car accidents. I was like, dang, dude, don't let me ride with you. He was in another town over and he got T-boned and he was on the passenger side. And the car, he said, last thing I heard was the car screeching and I woke up in an ambulance. Very familiar. So in all three cases, his brain checked out and waited till it was safe before he came back. So I thought, well, it's just been fired and wired. Being in a vehicle is fired and wired in him in a very unique way. And so we just kind of dipped our toe into this, the mindfulness stuff. And I said, well, tell me about it. Tell me about that. And I said, what about the accident up in Lockport? And he said, I was sitting, my mom was driving, I was in the passenger seat and I could hear the screeching. Then he does this, ow, 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 ow. And his leg hurts. We're sitting in my office. We did the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing. We were in my office 40 years later. And he's like, like that. His leg, my leg is like. And I said, well, let's just pay attention to it for a second. That's prosody. So let's pay attention for a second. Let's just do nothing. See what happens with it. Let's pay attention to it. Breathe it down. And it dissipated. When I said, what happens next? He says, it's like it's dissipating. Come to find out, that door, the handle on the door hit his thigh. He said, I didn't even realize that. But the body keeps the score. So it's stored in cellular memory. But what we did in that moment was increase awareness with a sense of compassion. Was, let's not label it as anything, but my body's got some message for me. Period. Let's not label it fear, anger, anything like that. Let's just let it sit for a second. And then the message got across and then it dissipated. And we're making good progress on his being able to drive. He texted me the other day and said that he drove like 40 miles. He just went out for a drive and drove 40 miles, which is the first time he's done that in 10 years. It was pretty amazing. The work that he's doing, and it's kind of sits in. Let's have your brain start refiring and rewiring, being mindful of the message your body gives, and wait and wait. I'm also doing some EFT with him, which he's responding to very well. Let me see what else I have here. Okay, so if you're going to practice this, couple things. Remember the caveats. If you have PTSD or if you're having other significant mental health problems, do it with a partner, and also have some compassion for the information your body gives you. Don't label it. Just say this is information. Make sure you're safe. Make sure the person you're practicing with it is safe, and have them just say their questions they need to ask are, where is it and what is it doing? That's really. And just say, I'm here. This is a good spot for you. I'm here, and this is a good spot. You're not alone in this. You have all sorts of tools to address this now. The more they can give you that sense of safety, the more you can borrow it, the more the body says, okay, I know what to do with this now. We don't need it anymore. What I do with folks is I'll have them go from toe to head, toe to the nose. I'll have them crunch their toes up and release a couple times, and their feet. I'll tiptoe and point up, and I have them point their legs out and from the toe to the head up. And then after each one, I'll say, let's do nothing for a second, just to see if their body gives them any information. Let's be mindful of the information your body gives. And some folks, it's taken us a few sessions to just get through the body, because some folks have wrinkled up their toes and their stomach started acting up, which is their vagus nerve just saying, what are we doing here? Do I need to help us out? And so being if you need a little more structure in that way, you can create structure like that. But there's no race. It's not a race. It is, let's go the pace that the body says that it's willing to go. And don't go any further than you're comfortable with. So does anybody have, I'm pretty happy we got through that. Does anybody have questions or comments or thoughts before we have to go?